Once upon a time, there was a young girl. She was a happy little girl. She had a loving mother and a loving father and a pretty great life. But then unfortunately one day her mother died, which was very sad. And her father was very sad that his little girl didn't have a mother anymore. So he decided to remarry. But he maybe didn't pick the right person, because he actually married a pretty awful woman. And to make matters even worse, this awful woman had two awful daughters. But just when you think things couldn't get worse, this poor little girl's father died, so she was left all alone with her awful stepmother and her two awful stepsisters. Now, the awful stepmother and the two awful stepsisters were horrible to this poor little girl. They treated her like a slave. They made her do all the housework around the house. They wouldn't even let her sleep in a bed. They made her sleep in the fireplace with the ashes and the cinders. And because she slept in the fireplace with the ashes and cinders, she was dirty all the time. And because she was constantly covered with cinders, the awful stepmother and the two awful stepsisters called her Cinderella. Now, despite having a pretty awful life, Cinderella was still a pretty positive girl. She did have two friends. She had a pumpkin that she liked to play with, and she had a rat. Now, you wouldn't think a pet pumpkin and a pet rat would be really great friends, but it was enough for Cinderella, and it kept her happy. And despite the awful, awful stepmother and awful stepsisters, she was pretty content. But then one day the word went out that there was going to be a ball at the castle. It turns out the king was tired of his philandering son not getting married and not settling down and not producing any grandchildren, so he decided he was going to throw a ball and he was going to make his son pick a woman at this ball to marry and have grandchildren with, so he would be happy. The king would be happy, not the grandson. He wanted to keep the son. He wanted to keep philandering. But sometimes you got to do what your parents say. So word went out that there was going to be this great, great ball. Everyone got excited, even Cinderella, because she thought, well, you know, I'm pretty dirty, I have a pretty awful life, but I've got a charming personality, and I bet I can win over the prince, and then I'll ditch these guys, and I'll have it good. But the evil stepmother and the two evil stepsisters, they had something else in mind. They said, Cinderella, you cannot go to the ball because all you have are these awful ashy clothes covered with cinders, and they won't let you in the ballroom, so tough luck. So Cinderella, she cried, wah, 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 and they said, ha, 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 and off they went to the ball, leaving her home alone, crying, wah, 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 wah. But eventually she stopped crying, because crying is annoying, and no one likes that. And when she stopped crying, something magical happened. Cinderella's fairy godmother appeared. And she said, Cinderella, because you stopped crying, which is annoying and no one likes, I've decided to appear and grant you a wish. I am going to allow you to go to the ball. And Cinderella said, oh, but I can't go to the ball because all I have is these awful cindery clothes, and they won't let me in. And the fairy godmother said, oh, I can fix that. And she waved her little wand, and poof! Cinderella's awful, horrible, ashy clothes transformed into a magical, beautiful dress, complete with shiny glass slippers. And Cinderella was so happy, she jumped up and down, she said, yay, yay, now I can go to the ball. And she started off running, but she didn't get very far because glass slippers aren't very good for running. She stumbled a little bit. And fairy godmother, she said, slow down, Cinderella, you can't go yet. You can't just run to the ball. We need to get you some proper transportation. So she waved a little magic wand, and poof! She transformed Cinderella's pet pumpkin into a beautiful carriage. And then the fairy godmother, she said, well, we need something to pull your carriage, so she went up, poof! And she transformed Cinderella's pet rat into a rather beautiful, rather striking steed to pull the carriage along with Cinderella. And Cinderella was so happy, she said, yay, 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 and she jumped in the carriage and she said, let's go! And as she rode off, the fairy godmother, she called after her and she said, Cinderella, remember, magic isn't permanent. At the stroke of midnight tonight, everything will turn back to the way it was. So have a good time and get back home before midnight. So off Cinderella went in her magic carriage, pulled by her magic horse, to the ball, and the ball was wonderful, and she looked radiant in her big, beautiful dress, so radiant that her evil stepmother and her two evil stepsisters who were there, when they saw her, they didn't recognize her, because they said, who is this beautiful, beautiful woman in this radiant dress? And the prince, he took notice too. He said, look at that beautiful woman in that radiant dress. So he started dancing with her, and he really liked her. And not just because she had a beautiful dress, but because she had a charming personality, and she was steadfast and courageous, and she had all kinds of good qualities beyond having a nice dress. So they danced and danced and danced, and they fell in love, and the prince was about to propose marriage when the clock struck midnight. And went bong, 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 because that's what clocks do when they strike midnight. And Cinderella, she knew on that 12th bong, 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 everything was going to change back to normal. So she took off running, run, 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 run. She did not want the prince to see her in her crappy clothes. So off she goes, run, 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 run. And the prince says, no, stop. And he jumps after her, and he reaches for her, and he catches her by the foot, but she keeps going. Off she goes, but off comes her slipper in his hand. So off goes Cinderella, with one shoe in her. Clop, hop, hop, getting away. And there's the prince left, holding the slipper that got left behind. And she run, 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 and she makes it out of there just in time. And when midnight strikes, poof, everything turns back to normal. The fancy horse here became a lily rat again. And the big beautiful carriage over here, it turned back into a regular pumpkin. And Cinderella's beautiful dress, it turned back into Cinderella's old, cindery, lousy dress. But one thing remained. The glass slipper remained. And the glass slipper that the prince caught remained too. So the prince, that's all he had left to this girl. And he said, I'm going to find the woman that this slipper belongs to. I don't care how long it takes. So he went out into the village and he started trying the slipper on everyone's foot. And you would think the slipper would fit some people's feet. But it turned out Cinderella had very unusual wide bridges on her. Her arch was kind of weird, and her foot were wide, and she had a toe that was curved kind of funny. So she had very, very specific feet. So this slipper, it wouldn't just fit anyone's foot. So off he went, trying it on. It wouldn't fit on anyone's foot, and he's getting more and more discouraged. And then finally, he came to the house where the evil stepmother and two evil stepsisters lived, and there was Cinderella. Now Cinderella, she was up in her room crying because she was sad because she had such a good time, but she knew she couldn't do it again because it was a one-time thing with the magic and blah, blah, blah. So life was going back to not being so great. All she had left to play with was the pumpkin and the rat. And that kind of was not good. So there she was crying, crying, crying. She didn't even know this was going on. But the prince, he showed up at the door, knock, 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 and he said, I want to know if any of you guys fit the slipper. And he could tell by looking at these guys right away that they weren't going to fit the slipper. But they tried anyway. They tried and tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, but they had these weird curly feet, so they did not fit the slipper at all. And then he was about to leave when he heard the crying upstairs, and he said, what's that? And the evil stepmother said, oh, that's nobody, don't worry about that. The prince said, oh, I think I hear something. And she said, no, no, no. And he said, yes, yes, yes. So off he went, up the steps. And he opened the door, and there was Cinderella lying on the bed in her cindery outfit. But the prince, he recognized her. He could see through the clothes. He wasn't shallow like that. He could see her good personality and all her good qualities, and he knew it was her. And he said, yay, yay, it's you. Put on the slipper. But then he fumbled, and he dropped the slipper. And the slipper fell down the stairs, and it smashed up, smash, 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 into a million pieces. And the evil stepmother, she said, ha, 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 I guess you're not going anywhere, Cinderella. That's not going to fit you, ha, ha, ha. And the prince, he was so sad because he needed the slipper to work in order to marry the girl. And he was so sad, and he was crying, and he was forlorn. But then Cinderella said, oh, don't worry, I have the other slipper right here. And then the prince was happy, and he took the other slipper, and he put it on, and it fit her feet, because she had the weird arch, and the bridge, and the weird toe, and all that stuff. But it fit perfect. And then he was so happy that he got married to the princess. She became a princess, because she married him, and they lived happily ever after. And these guys did not live happily ever after. They had to take care of themselves after that, so they had to sleep in the fireplace, so they got all cindery. Because that's what they deserve. And Cinderella, she got to live with the prince, because that's what she deserved. And she could have worn fine, beautiful clothing, but she decided she liked her lousy, cindery dress, so that's what she wore all the time. And the prince, he loved her despite it. The end.